Hello, everyone, and welcome to my channel. I'm so excited to have Ingrid on with me today. Ingrid, how are you doing?
Oh, doing great. I'm so blessed and so honored to be here with you today, Silvia. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So where were you at the time just before your near-death experience? Tell us what was happening right before.
I was very young at the time. I was close to 3 years old. And I am from Colombia. So at the time I lived with my parents and my sisters in Bogota, Colombia. And also with us was a maid. In Colombia, it was very normal for the culture at the time to have a maid that lived in the house with the family. Especially because Colombia was a country at war. So it was safer for these young girls to live in the cities with families. Then that morning, it was very early, and my parents, both of my parents worked, and they would leave us at the care of this lady. And when they were around, she would play it, but when they were not there, she wouldn't even pay attention to us. She was actually a pretty grumpy person. So they left early that morning, and my sister and I realized that, okay, she's not watching because she went back to her room.
Right.
And then we decided to go play at the back of the house where there was a tank. And the purpose of this tank was for hand washing clothes.
Oh, I see.
Then my sister and I went to the patio and found a ball and look at each other like, oh, let's play cash across the tank. Of course, at that age, you're not thinking about any danger, none of that. So we just grabbed this ball, and this tank was really big, Silvia. It was about 900 gallons.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we're held in this tank. And the purpose of this tank was for hand washing clothes.
Right.
At the time, we didn't have a washing machine. So next to this tank, there was a flat surface for scrubbing. So my sister, she grabbed a stool, she climbed on the tank, and thinking about it, it was safer being in this flat surface than doing what I did, that was going to the other side of the tank. And I bended my legs, and I was in a very thin edge, trying to hold my balance there.
I see.
So my sister grabbed the ball, she threw the ball, and she didn't apply enough force. So the ball fell in the water. And when I looked at the ball, I thought I could grab it. So I leaned forward to try to grab this ball. And when I touched it, it rolled on the surface of the water. And because I was leaning very precariously, I lost my balance. And I just fell into the tank. Oh. And there's few things here that just make the experience. I always mention that the contrast during the experience, because it's what made it so impossible to forget. So one of the first things I felt when falling into this tank was the sense that the water was frigid cold. People have the misconception that because I am from Colombia, I come from a hot weather country, but Bogota is a city located high up in the Andes.
Oh, I see.
So yeah, the temperature around 6, 7 in the morning was probably 30, 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So when I fell into this tank, the first feeling was like, this water was really cold. Wow. And I just had the sense like my chest had imploded. And at that moment, it was when I realized I cannot breathe. And this is incredible because Silvia, up to that moment, I had never been in a pool. I had never been in a bathtub. So I did not know that if you have your head under the water, you cannot breathe.
Wow. Wow.
So it came that moment of absolute horror. Why I cannot breathe. And then I just sank into this tank. It was a deep tank, and I tried to go to the surface, but I didn't know how to swim. And my sister, I had my eyes open looking at her. She was at the surface. She's trying to reach me, but I just went deep in the tank and she could not reach me.
Oh.
And then I started to have this sense of being in absolute horror. And I'm in the state of like terror, trying to get out of this water, when just like that, in just a blink, I went from this state of complete terror to one of pure peace. Peace, calmness. It was just like, wow, nothing to fight for. No need to breathe, no need to escape, just feeling absolute well-being.
Wow.
And it comes the other contrast that I'm mentioning, and is that this tank was very dark. It was entirely made of cement. It had a roof on top. So it was a very dark space. So the last thing I saw with my eyes open was darkness. Darkness of the space. And then in just a blink, when I went to the space of feeling in this sense of peace and stillness and calmness, a light came on from the bottom.
From the bottom?
Yes, this was like the light of a candle.
Wow.
Like it was soft enough, but able to illuminate the whole watery surrounding. And then I was now mesmerized, like, oh, there's light. The other thing I like to mention is that right before I felt the peace, I could hear, in the moment I'm experiencing terror, I could hear my heart like bumping, because I guess I was under the water. I could hear in my head, my heart bumping so hard, just panic, like boom, boom, boom. And that was the other incredible thing. After just hearing all that noise, it came the silence. And it's when I call the silence behind the silence. And Silvia, I craved that silence later for the rest of my life. How can I go back there? It was like, and then now I'm in this state of calmness, silence, light, and just enjoying this moment when I started to see bubbles that were just appearing from nowhere. And these bubbles were surrounded by light. And imagine, with that childlike mind, I'm like, whoa. And I started to chase these bubbles. And it was by chasing these bubbles that I turned around. And it's when I saw a body suspended in the water. And incredibly, at that moment, it's like I didn't even feel surprised. It was the knowing, that is my body. I recognized it, and it was that also sense of familiarity. Like, oh, this already happened before. Like, there's nothing new about this.
Wow. So you had a sense that you had experienced that already?
Yes. I had the sense that I experienced the eternity of who I was. So this already had happened many times. So, that was familiar. So I just kind of look at it like nothing new is happening. And it comes the other incredible contrast, and is that I was born as a very sick child. And I spent almost the first 3 years of my life feeling unwell. So this was the other incredible thing. Imagine not knowing what well-being is, because I had been sick for almost 3 years, and now having this sense like, oh gosh, I feel so incredibly well.
Mm-hmm.
Then of course I look at that body and I'm like, oh no, I'm not going back there.
Even then, even at that age.
Yes, it was
Wow.
that clarity in my mind. That it's amazing how much clarity, how much I knew at that moment about the existence of me, the nature of me. And it was like at that moment I turned around and just left the body behind. Like I even knew I could do this, I could make this decision.
Wow.
And the moment I turn around, I see flowers. And these were flowers that were blooming like from nowhere. And this is the other amazing thing, that there's not even like the concept of dimension, because then suddenly I was just picked up by these flowers. So they were big or small, I don't know. They just picked me up, or if I was small or big, there was no concept of that. I was just picked up by these flowers and I'm being carried away. And I put the analogy, Silvia, that this is like going back to the womb, where you don't have to do absolutely anything. You're just being done. It was just relaxing, like, there's nothing I have to do. Just in the state of bliss. And then...
Do you remember the colors of the flowers at all?
It was, I mainly, when I think about it, mainly I saw colors like white, purple.
Nice.
I would say blue. It was, everything was so soft, so, it's like the sense of gentleness in everything. So nothing was like too sharp or too vibrant or it was just peaceful. So is it the first time that somebody asked me about that?
I've been wanting to ask you 100 questions, but you're so good at saying it. I literally feel like I'm experiencing it. So I want to continue. So it was effortless. It was like you were in the womb, and then?
And then just like that, in a blink, I appear in the maid's room. And I'm looking at the maid from above, like if I'm floating in the ceiling, and she's lying on her bed, completely unaware, Silvia, what is happening to me. And then this experience is so vivid, so real, so clear, that I can even remember the soap opera she was listening in the radio.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm looking at her and I just say, oh, that's Maria. Nothing. So from there, in just again, like a flash, I appear in my mom's path. She didn't have a car at the time. And we live in this was like a big neighborhood that she had to cross to get to her bus stop. Right. So she was walking when I appear again, like looking from above, and I'm like looking at her and I'm like, oh, that's Mom. And the moment I said these words, Silvia, she stopped. She didn't even hesitate. She didn't even like move, nothing. She just stopped, and she knew that something was happening at home.
Wow, I find that completely fascinating, that connection that she had with you as her child. And whenever I ever saw your story, and I've seen it a few times, and I'm so excited to have you, but whenever you say this part, I just know, like as a mother, you need to get home now.
Yes, yes. And you know what I also tell people about this is that how important it is to listen to your intuition. Because my mom was a very intuitive person, but she also listened to it. So at that moment when she felt that, she turned around and she started to just run back home. And I'm looking at her from above, and I'm like, oh, okay. But then at that moment, I got distracted by the realization that wherever I put my mind, I could go.
Wow.
So I remember seeing a dog at the end of the street, and boop, now I was there. So I'm like, whoa. So now I would look somewhere else, and I was there, and I'm like, wow, fascinated playing this game of going places. So for me, time and space just completely, I would just say, change dimension. Just I wasn't experiencing the time and space that we experience here on Earth.
So did you feel like you were, pardon me, did you feel like you were any age? Were you aware that you were a child or no age?
I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just having fun.
Yeah.
So at that moment, it's like when you're having fun that you just abandon the sense of self and you just enjoying. You don't think any of these.
Right.
And when I'm in this just moment of joy, again, like everything happening in this experience in just a flash, I appear in a realm that was made of pure, bright, intense, shiny light. Oh my God, Silvia, this was the first time in my 3 years, almost 3, that I felt that I was home. It was the sense of like, oh, I'm finally home. And again, it was the sense of familiarity. I'm just coming back home, and I felt welcome. And again, it was that sense that time didn't pass. It was like not 3 years have passed. Like I had left in the morning to go to school, and I'm back just in the afternoon and no time. So again, it's like all this knowing, all that I knew was vanished. And now I was home, free from any pains, from any aches, from any condition. Anything I knew was gone. And I'm like, oh, this feels so well. And although I didn't see or hear anybody, it was that sense of like feeling welcome. And this is another amazing thing. Although I saw my body suspended in the water, up to that point, I did not have the realization that I was not Ingrid, that I was not that persona, that I was not that. It was now the sense that I am none of that. And I started to realize myself as a being of light. And I started to dissolve with the whole. And up to the point I was still having like a sense of self, but it was just started to go away to the point, Silvia, that I experienced what I call the state of non-self, or the state, I call it nothingness. Some people get scared about the nothing, but I would say is that nothingness that encompasses everything. It's kind of like, the way I say it is this state of no description, no concept, no knowledge of it, no color, no meaning, no feeling. It's just completely new. The only thing I could say is a state of absolute presence and just pure consciousness. So it's just absolutely beautiful.
You know, I've been so entrenched, I couldn't even take a sip of my tea. And I've got to tell you, I feel like you have been heaven sent to me. And the reason being is I've been thinking about this and what happens once you pass. And you're describing it with such detail and so eloquently. Literally, I feel like I'm there. And when you're saying about the nothingness and how that sometimes scares people, absolutely. And I'm coming to the conclusion, listening to you and others, that The fear is letting go of that identity. Like when we're here and we're so involved in being ourselves that we actually let go. Like what you said, you felt like you were at home. And my thought is, well, what does home represent? Does it represent your house? Does it represent a feeling? And I mean, it's just, honestly, my mind is blown. Keep going.
And I will mention more that state of home later, because I learned it even like, wow, being here in my human environment, in my physical environment. So yes, at that moment I am immersed in just this state of complete and absolute, I would just call it bliss, presence, tranquility, calmness, stillness, when my mom finally made it home. And this is the other amazing thing. She knew exactly where to go because we had a big house. She would have gone anywhere else. Yeah, the body only can stay alive so long. Then she went directly to the back of the house. My sister was still there. And later on in life, I learned that the purpose of my sister being there was for my mom to know for sure that I was there.
Mm-hmm.
Other thing, people ask me why your sister didn't go to the maid, and I said to them, because this lady was actually, she was pretty rough with us and we fear her. So we always fear reprisal. So of course we didn't supposed to be playing in this party, in this tank. So
yes.
Yeah, she wasn't going to go there and tell her what was happening.
Right. That's logical. I think kids get scared. Like they're like, oh my God, something bad happened. And they don't want to go tell so they don't get in trouble. Right. But your mom came and she was there.
And she told my mom, Ingrid is there and I cannot get her.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom, this is everything that, and it's amazing how life works so perfect. When we meant to be here, we meant to be here. I mean, this is the perfection of life. My mom was trained CPR because she worked with children, and it was part of her training. And so incredibly, she knew CPR for children.
Wow. And that was kind of rare. Like, I don't know that a lot of people knew CPR then.
Exactly. So this is amazing how I meant to be here. Mm-hmm. And it's when we see the miracles in life and how all of us are placed together in the exact place, and knowing the things we have to know to just help each other and to, I guess, bring the plan to flow. So my mom got me out of the water. She knew what to do. She started to do all she knew, but I was so disconnected, Silvia, so disconnected from this reality, from this world, that I did not feel anything she was doing. And then she said my body was like a raggedy doll. She said that there was no pulse, there was no breathing, that there was no life in this body. But she was doing everything she knew. And then again, like everything in this experience, in just a blink, I felt that I had jumped from the tallest building in the world. And like I was being like pulled, like I was being sucked back into the body. So it was that sense of like, there's nothing I could do. Like, and I'm being pulled, and I'm pretty much almost in like this a mental scream, like, no. And now I am back in the body. And then it was that sense of, I don't want to be here. I was not a happy person. I knew I was back because all these feelings of discomfort and pain and coldness, and just the sense that there was lack of freedom was back. And I was back in this body and I didn't want to. So that's when things after my near-death experience were very hard for us, because I just didn't want to be here. So what happened after this, Silvia, is that I would just look at myself in the mirror and I would just tell my mom. I was like, you don't understand. This is not me.
Mm-hmm.
This
Mm-hmm.
is not my name, and I should not be here. My mom would just look at me, and they really didn't know what to do, what was happening. They, at the time, they were too young. They were in their 20s, and like I mentioned before, Colombia was a country at war. And with all this situation, they were trying to do what they could and just live the day to day and saying, this is going to get better. This is going to be okay. But what happened also to bring this to clarity is that I came with an awareness I did not have before. So when I came back, to me it was clear. I have this knowing that my parents were not just my parents. I had the sense that they were my equal.
Mm-hmm.
The other sense I had was that I couldn't relate with other children.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, it's like, what is happening with these people?
Mm-hmm.
They don't know anything. It was a sense of what is going on, because I also came with abilities, Silvia, that I didn't have before, besides this awareness. And not long after, I could read and write. I could resolve mathematical problems. I could put together complex puzzles, and it just was coming pretty fast. But to me, it was the sense, I don't have to learn anything. I'm just remembering.
That is fascinating. How did this influence your life? Like, I have to tell everybody this because I don't know if you made the relationship between drowning in water and having this experience and becoming an oceanographer or having a PhD in oceanography. Water, oceanography. Have you ever made that relation? Like,
Yes, and this is not the first time that that question come about, and this is amazing, because when people ask me, how could you become a marine scientist if you drown? That have to be just terrorizing, how you're not so touched by that. And I said, because to me, Silvia, incredibly drowning brought me to see the light. So I didn't stay in the trauma. For me, that was just what was needed to go home.
okay, and here's where I'm going in. I'm going, and I heard everything you said. Now I got all the questions that my audience has. So you came back, and then you grew up and you had this awareness that you never had before. And you're going through life and you're talking to people and children, and you're thinking, how do they not know this? Like, you're understanding that they don't have the same knowledge. Was it painful at times? Did you feel like you didn't belong, like even as an adult? And then when was that point of time? I asked you about 6 questions, sorry. When was that point of time when you realized, okay, I came to Earth because this? Tell us.
Oh gosh, there's so much to unpack from there. Because what happened that also makes me even more different from the other people was what happened after my near-death experience. And it, for me, it's like that door never closed. So what happened after my besides having all these abilities and this awareness, was that I just had the sense I cannot be here. So I stopped eating, I stopped talking, I didn't even want to be touched.
Oh.
Because I just didn't want, I was very sensitive. I did not want to be here. But the help that I needed came, Silvia, in the most remarkable way. So this is the other part when people ask me how you did not forget. And it's because my NDE, my near death, was not the end of it. After that, I started to have what we know today as out-of-body experiences.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So every time I would go to bed, I was being like brought back to that place, to the light again and again. So it kept happening. And now I became someone that wanted to be sleeping. and wanted to be in that. And again, my parents fired this lady, hired somebody else. But the new lady, if I was sleeping, that was better. She didn't have to deal with me. So how it's amazing how everything plays that important like role in our life to allow us, and in my case, to allow me to do what I needed to do. And it was in one of these journeys when one day, Silvia, I was surrounded by starlight figures. They were shining in all different colors.
Oh, did you just say star-like figures?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
And then I'm looking at, oh, what is this? It's like you are in the middle like of the universe, but instead of being black, it was just light. And there was like, say like stars, but shining in all different colors. And I kept seeing them. Oh, now I really wanted to go sleep. Amazing. So I would just go there. And in one of these journeys, one of these star-like figures that was shining in pure gold shaped itself into a human form. And it approached me and it touched me. And it's when I say, oh, you are a being of light. And then I woke up from there. Oh gosh, now I was like, I want to be there with these beings. But now is when the sense of home came more clear later in my life, but it's how the knowing where home is came with this experience, because now I wanted to be sleeping, but no, we need to be balanced. So what happened was that one day I was relaxing, taking shower. See, these things happen when the mind is calm, when you are giving a space to connect. And then I'm taking a shower, just relax. I was 4 years old now, when a blue light, shining, intense light appeared in the bathroom. And now I am like, oh, the beings of light are here. So it needed to be balanced, because otherwise I could not be the girl that is left forever, because that's all I wanted to do. So now the beings of light started to appear here. And I could see them everywhere. And it's when I started to heal. I started to eat. Up to that point, it has been really difficult to deal with Ingrid. But I was more calm. I started to talk more with my sisters. I felt this sense of joy. So later in my life is when it came clear to me, yeah, home is not a place, it's a state of being. So I didn't have to be somewhere else. I could be here with this physical reality, with this body, and be in that state of joy.
That's a big deal. That's a big deal. We need to pause here for a sec, because if people of the world could comprehend and implement what you just said, there could be a lot of joy right here, right now, versus wishing to go or to be somewhere else or to be someone else, but to actually become unified with that light right here. Wow, that's pretty profound.
So that was just incredible. At that moment of my life, I didn't get that, and you will hear that I didn't, but it was the wisdom I started to just be open to later in my life, and that understanding. But at that moment, I was just feeling really well, but I was still throwing tantrums because I did not have the sense of connection with my persona and with my name. So I would just, there was a day when my parents were calling me, the lady was calling me for dinner, and Ingrid, come, and I'm like, I would just feel so aggravated. And then she came and said, we're calling you for dinner, Ingrid, don't you hear? And I said, do not call me like that. That is not my name.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe this little child. And I think this is a good lesson for anybody whose parents listening, that your children are evolved beings in their own right. They have their own minds. Wow. Okay. So your mom's like, what is going on with this Ingrid child?
I pity my mom because she was so patient, so amazing. Oh gosh, but had to deal with this Ingrid. So at that moment, when I said, when asked me, what is your name then? How should we call you then? And I said, I do not need one. And that was the very first time that the beings of light started to talk to me. So now I wasn't just seeing, it was the first time I could hear. They sent me back to bed. They sent me to bed, like, go. Oh, just punish, go there, stop with this tantrum. And then I went to bed and I was crying, I was upset. And it's when I heard like this voice, so compassionate, so loving, so calm. And he says to me, like almost like in a whisper in my ear, like, it's going to take time. Like he's telling me a secret. It's going to take time for them to understand that names are not needed in the realm of the light, as you already know. Oh, at that moment was that sense of like, oh, I know now that I'm not crazy. Yeah, I know now that I really don't need a name. Of course, later in life, I understood that, yeah, names are needed here. This is part of all our experience, our process. But yeah, like they said to me, in the realm of the light, names are not needed. And incredibly, over time, when people ask me about the beings of light, who they are, what their names are, I never care about that. I never cared to ask a name because I didn't care to have a name myself. And because I had it clear, I don't need one. But when I was with them, even so, most times they didn't even have human shape, nothing. But I knew who was talking. I knew who was communicating because he's the essence. It's nothing else. It's not the shape, the appearance, none of that. So, but after that, it was just like knowing that, wow, I'm not crazy. But and it came the other thing. At that moment, they said to me, it's best that you don't tell anybody about us. They're not going to understand. And at that moment, for me, was even like, what is not to understand? Are you talking about? But no, yeah, soon I realized that if I would mention anything, I would say anything, including my family, they will be like, oh, she's dreaming, or she's making stories, or this is not real, whatever. It was clear to me that people around didn't even get it, understand it. So incredible, the beings of light said to me, there will be people put in your path to help you and to guide you. And one of the first people, and the first one that actually believed me, was my mom. Because when I went to school in like kindergarten, I was 5 years old by then, because the beings of light told me not to say anything. Then I had, a child, you have to express it somehow. So I was drawing. And I started to just paint beams of light everywhere. And I was painting them. And this one also, we discovered that I could see auras, because I was painting auras everywhere. This is what I saw. So I saw them everywhere around the objects, animals, people. And then the teacher came, and she's like, with this curiosity, like, Ingrid, what are these? The stars, the sun. And I said, and just like that, they're just very innocent. I looked at her and like, no, they are my friends, the beings of light. And she's like, what? She's just like, oh gosh. So she just called my parents, and they thought I had imaginary friends. And my mom came, and it's when they're looking at all these drawings, and I said, desperate for someone to believe me, I said, Mom, these are my friends, the beings of light, and these are the colors that we wear, because they were pointing at all these. But what? And my mom looked at me with these mom eyes, like, don't care aware. Because my mom didn't want me to be in trouble at school, and she was a teacher too. She's like pretty much told the teacher, this is just a phase, we'll work on it. Because they said that I had problems, like they had to work with my social skills because I was a very kind of lonely child. I was lost in my own world most of the time. So then once we were in our way home, my mom said, I believe you. I said, really?
That's great.
Yeah, and she said, I believe you because I also see things that others can't.
Wow.
And it's when my mom confessed to me that she had been seeing spirits since she was a child. I didn't know what a spirit was. So she explained, oh, okay. And then later when I was 6 years old and I started to see spirits too, is when I said to my mom, I freaked out. It was really scary. And it's when I said, my mom, no, mom, the spirits and the beings of light are not the same.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking the same thing about what you were thinking, just right there. And I didn't say anything, but I know exactly what you're talking about. Okay, keep going.
Then I just, my mom says, explain this well. And it's when my mom started to cry because she's like, okay, so explain me well, what is that you see? And she cried and she said, I think you're seeing angels. And I said, Mom, but they don't have wings like in the pictures. I grew up as a Catholic and that's all we knew. And she's like, they have to be your guardian angels because what else? And then by then I already been talking to the beings of life for a couple of years. So the first question I ask is, what is with these dark spirits? I call them dark spirits because they cause me fear.
Yeah.
Nothing else. And it was incredible because the answer, Silvia, was nothing like we're different, blah. No, actually the opposite. The answer was that thing that you call spirits, you, us, we're all the same.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is the level of awareness that you have about who you truly are.
Oh my gosh. Let's pause right here. Oh, wow. Mm-hmm.
So of course, the more aware.
Makes me emotional. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so the more you're touching the true nature of who you are, the less blocks, the veil out. So now you're touching the core of who you are. So the more aware, the more awakened, and now you're going back to that light that we are.
I think that's a massive message for people today, for all of us. Well, of course, Ingrid, you've already been there, but I think that, yeah, that's what people need to understand, is that they are that great, they are that beautiful, and their awareness can open. And by listening to your story, it facilitates that. It creates cracks so that light can come in, so that they can see, their awareness can grow, and they can see the bigger picture of who they are. And I think personally, for me, I think that's why you're here in part, is to share this story. And I like to create this platform for you and the others, but I have to say, your story is magical. Continue.
Oh, Silvia, it's just that knowing that we are all light. We're all the light. Even later in my life, I don't know if you remember a movie called Cocoon.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think 80s. It was a movie in which there was aliens, and there was a moment in the film where they kind of like rip apart the skin, and they're made of light. I'm watching this film with my sisters, and I'm like, oh, that is what we are, light. And they would look at me like nobody understood what Ingrid was saying, but I was in shock. Like, they're showing it there. We are made of light. And the other thing, that going back to that conversation with the beings of light that day, the other question I had, I said, my mom said that you are angels. Is that what you are? Oh my gosh, Silvia, the answer was absolutely beautiful. Because they said to me, you can call us whatever you want. Just when you realize how compassionate, how loving is the universe. They said to me, we present to you in the way that is best for you. So it's when we realize that how gentle is all this process of waking up. And I say gentle in the sense it appears to us it appeared to us in the way that we can digest it, understand it. Because imagine something like that appear, you cannot get it. What is going on? It can be transformed in many other things and ideas. So it just was coming and flowing in my life in the way that is just through time became more and more clear. But at the beginning, it wasn't easy. And it's when I come now to answer the question, one of the questions you made or you asked me before is, how did you take all this and how people around you took this? And for a while when I was a child, and I guess when you're a child, you just, okay, living more like in your own world. So I didn't have friends or anything like that because I was so weird in the eyes of many people. But to me, it's like I was okay with it. I had the beings of light, and I had my family and my sisters, but things at home started to become really hard. Especially because in Colombia, at the time, there was not a system that also would work with children with advanced learning abilities. Mm-hmm. So every time I in a school, I would just know things. And there was even my third grade teacher, she would put me in a corner and say, if you know more than anybody, stay in that corner and let us be. So I was, throughout my path, I kept knowing incredible people that was there helping me in the path, but many others that were just, I guess, this is how life is. We just see contrast, the hardship, the light, the hardship, the light. This is how life presents. So we kind of know where we are. That's how I see it. But then, thankfully, the other person that appeared in my path was my grandmother. And she
already passed away, or was she alive?
She just passed away about 2 years ago.
Oh, I see.
Yes. So my grandmother, she was raised as a Catholic too, but she always wanted to know more. She always wanted to learn more, and she just studied all different philosophies and religions, and that for Colombia and being Catholic was a no, but she was a very free woman. And the other thing she did is that she was her marriage was arranged. Oh, so she was very unhappy in that marriage all her life. She was 17 or 18 years old, and my grandfather was about 40 something when they married them. So that was so hard, and she just was so unhappy. Yeah. So she was one of these women in Colombia that she was among the first one to say no and just divorce. Divorce in the Catholic Church was not really allowed, so she went to live in Venezuela where she could marry again. So she was this.
Good for your grandma. Good for your grandma, though, right?
Sorry?
Good for her, though, for doing that, for having the courage and to say, no, this is not what I want to do. I'm leaving. Awesome.
Yes. So she came back to her life and would come visit Colombia, Bogota. And one time she brought a picture, and it was a guru surrounded by this aura. And I'm like, oh, what is that, Grandma? And she started to talk to me about all these things she was learning, and I was like amazed. And she was the first one that taught me meditation. And I started to meditate when I was 8 years old. And by the age of 12, she brought me to this little
Wait a
Zen.
minute. How did your grandma know about meditation in Colombia and Venezuela? And how did you get
Because she was very open. She became part of joined an order called the Rosicrucian Order.
Oh.
She started to study deeper and started to learn, oh, there's more than just being this physical being. And then she had a daughter that also was kind of interested in like Indian and Hinduism and Buddhism. And she had a son that was sick, and she decided to go to India to learn.
Your grandma?
Her daughter.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Her daughter went to India and she met this guru, and he just, oh gosh, taught her so many ways and to connect with her inner wisdom, to meditate. And at the time, that was completely new in Colombia. That was like, what? And she brought these teachings to my grandma, who was already seeking and looking.
I see. Okay, gotcha.
And my grandma brought it to us.
Nice.
And now, through time, this is incredible, Silvia, because I felt so different from everyone else. And I wrote this in my book. I was by the age of 12, when my grandmother took me to just visit this Buddhist temple. She did it because I was feeling this sense of despair inside. I was like, I'm not like anyone else. I'm so different. I didn't want to be here. I don't know. I just felt that I couldn't connect with the reality here. And then by the age of 12, I was already thinking for many years about wanting to die. And I told my grandmother I want to die. And she got so nervous about it. She's like thinking I'm going to try to harm myself. And I just said to my Grandma, I don't want to hurt myself. I just want to die. And then she took me to this little Zen Buddhist temple, which again, you said this was unheard. This was this little house in this neighborhood, just right there, almost pretty much hidden from the eyes of the world, but they were there. And then she said, I learned about this place. You're going to love it. Because up to that point, as I told you, when I had my near-death experience, I had the knowing that I was silence, stillness, presence. And I wanted to go back to that so badly. And I would go hide into closets, hide into chapels, hide into any place where I could be in silence. And then she took me to this temple. She said, like, there you're going to be close to that feeling. And then we went to this temple, and this monk taught me a breathing meditation technique. It was my first breathing meditation, and that was incredible. I felt a sense of home again. It just felt really familiar. Later, I had access to past lives, and I realized that I've been a Buddhist monk before in other lives. So that's how I had this sense of familiarity. Then I am like, at the end of this meditation, I meet the monk, and I said, my grandma is a very busy woman. I don't think we can come back. And he says, you don't need to come back. And I said, really? And he said, no, because you already have a temple. I said, what? And he says, yes, you are the temple. So you can practice this breathing meditation wherever you are.
Wow.
Whenever you want.
So
for me, yeah, that's how I just started to carry. Now I have learned to pray because I came from Catholic teachings, and I love praying. There was a moment in my life I also wanted to be a nun,
Mm-hmm.
My connection with God. I would be in a church and I'm like, I just wanted to be with God.
Mm-hmm.
And then now I learned how to meditate, and I was just looking for that place where I could be at peace. But of course, imagine a girl like this going to school, surrounded by other children, surrounded by crazy life, but a country that was at chaos. So it's like I felt I didn't fit. And it was when, this sense of discordance, I don't fit here. And I started to grow up. And it's when now boys started to come to the house. I had 3 sisters by now. They were very beautiful. And it was just like, oh, my oldest sister was like always, Ingrid, you have to wear this makeup and you have to hear this music. And I was like, I was an alien, Silvia, in this world. And my sister was kind of there to show me, no, this is the way you behave here. And this is the way you do things here. But I just felt like I didn't belong.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really have much friends. I was a very lonely person in this, the daily day world, because my grandmother brought me to do other things. I learned transcendental meditation. By the age of 14, I was already doing all these forms of meditation, going to all these groups, but I always was the youngest. Nowadays it's different because everybody has access, but that was very limited. It was my grandmother taking me to all these things.
Yeah.
And then now it was the time to start college. And it's when I just realized, you know what, I'm tired of being different. I don't want to be that. I want to be the person that can fit in, that can have a boyfriend, that can have friends, that go to a party and feel okay. And then it's like I decided to make this change. And that was when I told the beings of light. I said pretty much like, I want to go and do my thing. Some people they say, how could you do that? I mean, I was 19 years old and I now wanted to be like the rest of the people. But I also say this is not like, oh my God, you just cut this connection and you're gone. No, this is all a process. So when I have this request, it was more like the sense that, to give you an analogy, that you go to college, then you leave home, but your parents are always one call away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not like your parents disappear, nothing. I mean, the connection is still there. You just moved to a different environment, just went to do something else. And that was so amazing because it was when the beings of light said, yeah, go. And then that was great because at that moment I continued my life. Then now I got a boyfriend and started to do my studies. I started to study marine biology, become really busy. And I had to travel and do things. But this is another thing, Silvia, that this is so important. Because what did I do with this decision? Imagine for 19 years, although I had different sufferings related with feeling that I was different from everybody else, those were minor sufferings for what was going to come later. Because for those 19 years, I have been in a room with the light on. To give you an analogy, what happened when you're in a room with the light on? You don't trip with the furniture. You know where you are. You have clarity.
I see.
What was my choice at that moment?
Yeah.
Turn off the light.
Yeah.
Now I was on my own, and that was great. Yeah, you go do your thing.
Yeah.
And now I was in a room with the lights off. So for the next 20 years, oh gosh, if I had sufferings, big sufferings. And that was the other thing that when I told the beings of light, I had at that moment an experience. Talking about it will be too long, but I had what is called a spiritual transformative experience. And where I had the sense of experiencing the near death, the same thing, the nothingness. I was sitting in a bus and everything dissolved. And I went to that place, being in awareness, like this, sitting in this bus. I went to that space of nothingness for a few seconds. And I came back with some really deep questions, Silvia. At that moment I say, when did we stop being one with the whole? And how is it possible to forget who we truly are? But I also had that question of why me? Why this is happening to me? So yeah, I felt like a victim of all this at that moment. And it's when the beings of light said to me, in 20 years, you will understand.
I feel like you are a spirit being who came here, and then that reality was open for you. That reality was ripped open. And it's almost a lesson, like when you're here, be here, focus and pay attention on this lesson, be present, because this is not your, maybe that's why. And oftentimes I've asked myself this question, why can't we remember where we came from? Why do we forget the past lifetimes or the place where we have been? And it's precisely to prevent that kind of utter confusion of saying, you know, why can't I be in that great place? You know, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be having earthly experiences of suffering and pain and physical pain and emotional pain and things like that. But the pain is actually what teaches us the lessons. It feels like it's been a long suffering journey for you.
It was very difficult, Sylvia. It was very heavy, because imagine, having the sense that you were not like anybody else. So yeah, it in itself carried many sufferings, because it was the sense of like, I am an alien. Although my mom and my grandmother were the ones that I felt, okay, they kind of know some of this language, and they brought me to other people. There was not much. I mean, maybe if I would have been in India or I don't know, in Tibet, okay, yeah, I would have been in an environment where I was more understood. But I had to be born there, where I guess it was part of my purpose to bring that light, because at the end I brought it to my entire family. And nowadays, one way or another, they all became more self-aware.
That's wonderful.
So that we have to be, and that's the, I guess that's the compassion that we carry. And like you said, for forgetting is an act of compassion that we have with our own selves. The beings of light said to me, why do you want to carry that whole wardrobe? You can have a brand new one and enjoy new things. You were too preoccupied with what it was, you would never enjoy what is. But that's the error that we make, that we, even in this life, get trapped. The beings of light said one day to me, you think that you're actually really using the gift of thinking, right? You think that you're really thinking? And I said, yeah, we think all the time. And they said, no, you're trapped in memories.
Boom, another one.
Yes, we're trapped in memories. So the only time we're using the thinking as a gift, as a true gift, is when we're able to calm the mind, to clear the mind and be present. When we do that, is that the connection happens. And now we're connected with the true thinking of the universe, the creative thinking of the universe. That's when answers come, when art flows through us, when, an equation gets answered, when incredible project, medicine. Why? Because it's when we open our mind. If you think about this, a lot of the discoveries don't happen when you are involved in the problem, because what are you doing? You're calling your own memories. How can you have the answer if you are, I would say, like the cow chewing the same grass?
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah.
And in the moment that you're doing dishes, that you're taking a shower, that you went on vacation, that you were fishing, whoop, that you were completely disconnected from all of that. And the moment the mind is calm, the answers come.
You're so right. Even Tesla said that his answers came to him when he was just like in dreams or in times where it was a download. And I've experienced the same, and I'm sure you have too. How awesome is this that you came on today to share this with us? How enlightening is this? How wonderful. And especially that last thing you said, you think you're thinking, but you're just reliving memories. Wow. And I feel sometimes I actually think that our life is a deep dive, and I've said this before, a deep dive into a slice of reality, which is a memory that we are reliving.
Yes, yes. You know, I started to have access. First thing, I started to have visions of the future since I was 4. So at 4, I already knew I was going to be a marine scientist. At 9, I knew who my husband was going to be. At 12, I knew I was going to work with NASA, even with technology that was not created yet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And by the age of like 17, 19, 17, I started to have access to past lives.
Wow.
So this is another thing that can be very heavy for the mind, because it separates you from the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine having access to all this. So the mind has to be already in very clear state of awareness. So, but incredibly, having access to past life experiences, as I mentioned to you, I was born with being very sick. I was born with respiratory problems. My mom was very sad during the pregnancy when she was pregnant, and she drank a lot of coffee and she smoked a lot. At the time, there was not knowledge that if you smoke,
It's true.
that was bad for the baby.
Yeah.
So I was born very sick.
Yeah.
And after drowning, imagine, so my body was just not good. And I was very sensitive to everything. So by the age of 17, just like naturally, I went to a hypnosis event, and I started to, now that I knew that this was possible, it started to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I went to see a psychologist because I was interested in hypnosis. I'm like, I want to learn about this. And then when the guy put me there to do the hypnosis, instead of seeing myself, I started to see his life when he was a child.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah.
And that was so new there. I was like, what is going on? So he sent me to another guy that was doing research about past lives. And it's when just naturally, he just put me there to do some hypnosis, and I went back and started to see other lives.
Yes, and you've written everything in your book about your experience. And I want to make sure that I mention this, and I don't forget, you have to get Ingrid's book. It is just fabulous. You're going to enjoy the read, enjoy the stories, but more importantly, it's going to be highly transformative for you and your energetic field. At least that's what I think. Continue. So I want to ask you, of course, we could talk forever because, I mean, honestly, I want to get to be friends. I mean, I could listen to you forever. But for the sake of the interview, I want to ask you, what is a message that you could give to people's hearts today about them and the earth? Maybe we'll start with them, and then the second one, the earth.
Oh gosh, I just think that it is important to remember that we are not separated from nature, that we are nature. The moment that we create that division, not just even with the plants, the animals, but with ourselves, the moment we disconnect, then we start harming. The message that I got, I asked the beings of light, what was the purpose of my near-death experience? They said to bring the message of connection. And I said, how come? They said, remember when you saw your body and you walk away from it? And I said, yes. They said, that was still your ego mind making that decision. But as you see, there was a bigger plan for you. And the plan was to come back and bring the message and of the power of connection. That's why you went to look for the maid and you went to look for your mom. And I said, okay, if I was going to come back, why did I waste time going to the maid? And they said, to show you contrast. Your question about suffering. What is all these, I would say, obstacles, challenges, things that present in life? And they say to show you contrast. What happened when you went to the maid's room? She could not feel you. She could not hear you. She couldn't know what was happening with you because there was no connection.
Did you try to get her attention?
Oh, yeah, I just mentioned her name and that was it. But they said there was no connection.
Wow.
So she could not feel you.
And then your mom felt you. Wow, okay, getting it.
Exactly. So they said, look what happened when there is connection. Right. Not even words are needed. You don't need to do anything.
Wow.
Love doesn't know barriers. There's no limits. There's no dimensions. I was in the realm of the spirit. She was here and she could feel me.
I'm putting that on my Instagram. I'm going to start putting these quotes. How inspiring. Keep going.
So, of course, they said, look what happened when there is connection, complete and absolute love. And hear this. They said to me, look, your mom was the farthest away and she knew where to find you and she saved you. That's the power of connection. What happened when someone is disconnected? Hear this. They say when there is no connection, they will let you drown. There will be war. There will be disalignment, the killing of or destroying of nature, destroying of each other, fighting each other because we're not working in connection, in community together. We're competing. We're destroying.
Wow. I think you just taught me and my whole audience a big lesson about connection and the value of connection.
We have to be. And the other incredible thing, I learned connection and I learned the purpose of uniqueness. I always put the example of the fingers and the hand. Every finger is different because we come here with those traits. We're unique. The way you perceive the world, the way you perceive things, Silvia, are unique to you. No one in the history of humanity will be like you because the way you perceive life is unique to you. But what happens if I cut this finger off? By itself, it cannot do anything. What is it going to do? But guess what? With the uniqueness of each one, they can work together.
Cool.
That's power.
Cool.
Being unique and being together. And this is the other thing I say, this is the uniqueness that encompasses oneness. Because they are all different, but they are all attached to the same hand.
My goodness, that is so beautiful. Okay, so just before we go, out of curiosity for me, so how do you be a marine scientist? I'm sorry if I'm calling it wrong, but how do you be, like, I know how intensive that could be. How do you do that? And obviously you got married, right? Did you end up having kids too, or?
Yes, I have one
Yeah,
son.
So you're a mother, you've got that, you've got all these things happening, plus you're open to an immense reality and living. How do you connect that all? How do you make it happen?
And again, I love your question, Silvia, because the disconnection is in the mind. Why it has to be disconnected? Why it has to be a difference? If you are the essence of who you are that wherever you are in whatever you do. And when you're connected with your inner wisdom, with your inner self, the higher self, guess what? You do better projects, you get better ideas, you get solutions, you love deeper, you have more compassion, you make projects for people to have awareness. And that's how I did work in science. How can I create things that bring people to get closer to nature?
I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for you that you're in the world. I'm so grateful for you that you're in this interview, and for my audience to be able to get to meet you. I feel, again, I know it's a good interview when I want to cry. I absolutely love you.
I want to share one thing. Oh, me too.
Please do.
Before we go, but this was the other thing. There was a moment, I love that question you asked me, because there was a moment when I had the big awakening now. Because when I was a child, I was an aware child, but I was not aware of that awareness. I just had it. It was natural in me. I was that. But later in my life, I had what I call a big awakening. And it's when I became aware, or self-realized. I became aware, oh, I am awareness. I am consciousness. Wow. So now I would just say I continue being a child, but an aware child. And then I was still working with NASA, with the Navy, with these organizations. And there was a moment where I'm just like, again, in connection, direct connection with the beings of light, having all this clarity, wanting to write my book. And I said to them, what can I say, or what can I do for these people that are so disconnected from all this, to understand, to know? And the answer was beautiful, Silvia, because they said, do or say nothing. He said, the light of your awareness is all they need. So what was the lesson? Yeah, it's not about doing, it's not about saying, be that. If you're the embodiment of that light, that joy, that compassion, that love, that kindness, where is the separation? You are it, and wherever you are, you emanate that light. And you know what? Which one became my mantra in life, which was something we just discussed with a friend not long ago, and I said to him, that's been my mantra all my life. My mantra when I go to people is, how are you doing today? But with meaning, with intention of really asking, how are you doing today, Silvia? And I would just do it. I would smile, and people will feel like she cares. It's incredible how using some words that you really mean to use, people open their heart to you and to themselves, because now they feel good that day. And then it ripples now. Oh, now they make feel good somebody else. So it's just be that essence, be that light, and you're already being a purpose.
That's so funny that you say that, because when I asked you, when the words came out, what is a message that you would like to send to my audience? I was thinking, your whole story was a message to the audience. You didn't have to say, although I'm glad I asked, because that's where the connection came through. But your whole story, just you being you, you're a light in the world. Imagine all the people who meet you, and you're smiling, and you're caring, and you're loving. That's transformative.
Oh, this is
Thanks
just
again. Yeah, thank you so much. To you. And Ingrid's going to be speaking at IONS. She's an international speaker on the subject of NDE. She's also going to be speaking at the Near Death Experience Online Summit. Do you have more than one book as well?
Oh, I have one book, but the book is now coming also in Spanish.
Oh, in Spanish, that's what it was. So you're going to have it. Wow, that's going to be a hit. I know that people will want to get their hands on that, and I'm just so excited. I can't even express the level of gratitude that I feel for this interview today. I feel very moved. I feel very inspired, and I know that also my audience is feeling that. Thank you. And this is going to be on YouTube for a long time, where people can come, and if they're feeling, or if they've had experiences similar to yours, they have hope, and that you're stimulating faith. And for me personally, it answered a lot of questions. So I want to thank you personally very much.
Oh, thank you for having me here. I feel so blessed.
Yeah. I hope to see you again soon on an interview, and I'm excited to see you also at the Near Death Experience Summit.
Yes, me too. Thank you, Silvia.